would just want to make sure that I start off by saying that contrary to some of the articles that were out yesterday, the team has not been sold. Okay, so I just want to be clear that that's the case. On this day, the team has not been sold. So, yes.
So if it hasn't been sold, why make the announcement right now then?
We did not. Okay, so, we tell this to everybody, unless it comes out of official Connecticut Sun or Mohegan Sun channels, it's not official. So we tell our staff, we tell our fans that until it's something that we announce, it's not something that's officially confirmed.
Mm-hmm. I guess you talked since the spring about the tribe was going through a strategic review of
yes.
their options. Is your understanding at this point that their intention is to sell, kind of regardless of to who?
I wouldn't say regardless, right? I think that from the beginning, the priority has been to find the best option, right? Whether it's investment or full sale. I think that is still the intent. But when you're in scenarios like this and processes like this, there's mechanics to what has to happen. So if a proposal is made to buy a team or invest in a team, that goes to the league, right? And then the league has to put that in front of the Board of Governors at some point for a vote. That's the process, so.
Jen? John, sorry.
Jen, have you had any talks with the potential ownership group, or have they met with the Board of Governors yet at all, do you know?
What I can say, because any sale or relocation is subject to board approval, so that's like non-disclosure agreement comes into play, so we're not allowed to actually talk about specific groups that we may have been talking to. But I can say that I have met personally with different investment groups over the last few months. And it's been a thorough process, and we're not quite at the finish line yet. But thinking about where this team was and where the league was, and the news that has come out across the board in terms of expansion fees and valuations, I'm pretty proud as a team president to think about where our league has come, and a $325+ million valuation. I've learned a lot, let's just say, in this process. I once asked, how does a team get valued? As these Sportico and Forbes articles come out, I always questioned, and it was always about team revenues. And then someone finally said to me, your team is valued based on how much someone's willing to pay for it. If somebody's willing to pay $325 million for one of our WNBA teams, I think, we've come a long way and we've arrived. And I think all of the ownership groups that have been through the thick and thin, that have stuck through the team, that have invested in the team when other ownership groups would not, they're the ones that should be celebrated. The Ginny Gilder group out in Seattle, and Michael Alter out in Chicago, and the Mohegan Tribe, decades worth of investment in the WNBA before it was popular to own a WNBA team. So I'm proud to be representing one of the ownership groups that has really invested in this. And I'm also proud that they've had the foresight to think about what the future holds for the WNBA. And whether or not they're equipped to ride into the future the way some of these other ownership groups have. I know the expansion process was also thorough. Kathy's talked about that a lot. They investigated whether cities were right. They investigated whether teams were going to build facilities and what size arenas they were playing in. And there's some of us in this league that aren't even at the standard of what expansion teams are expected to have when they come into this league. And so I appreciate that our ownership group has thought about that. They've been thoughtful and where they are and what the league might look like in 5 years, and the size of our arena, and the fact that we don't have a practice facility, and really have tried to do what's best for not just this team, but for the league as a whole.
Can I follow up on that real quick?
Sure.
How important was this place to the league at the time? Because a lot of major markets were able to put people in the seats back then. This really was a real important place.
They were I believe the first independent ownership group to own a WNBA team, correct? Mm-hmm. So I don't know what the precedence is for buying and relocating a team was 20 years ago, but clearly the tribe thought that Connecticut would be a great place for the WNBA. And they were right. And they invested in this team in so many different ways before it was popular. They did provide an arena and facilities that were above what other teams were doing for it. Have they gotten passed by? They know that, right? In some ways, but we've never suffered in loyalty and commitment and a great fan base and people who really care about taking care of our players. And the on-court success has been, it's a parallel to the support that our ownership group has put into this team. It's one of the most successful franchises in league history, regardless of whether we won a championship. This franchise has been super successful, and I'm proud of that.
Alexa and then Brendan.
Jen, in the Globe report, the story said that the league may be able to force the tribe to keep the team in Connecticut. Is that something you're able to elaborate on, if that's the case, and if, or even just why the league would want that to happen, and as opposed to going through this Boston group?
Let's see how I can answer that question. I can't really comment on what the league may or may not want for the Connecticut Sun. I will reiterate that they've been thoughtful about where they've wanted the league to go and having ownership groups that are invested at the right level. I can't imagine that if there is an investment group at the right level in a great city, why anybody would not consider that to be a viable option. You guys were there, right? Like, I can't speak to where the team's gonna go, but if Boston was an option, it's hard to argue that they're not a city that's viable for a WNBA franchise. Now, it's a one-off game, right? It's not 22, it's a small sample size, but I think our players have a great balance, and if you talk to Tina, she's a good one, of appreciation of what Connecticut has to offer you, especially as a veteran, but also understanding what young players in this league want, right? If you're 22 coming out of college and you're, considering your brand and you're considering your opportunities in a major market, I don't think it's a slight on playing at Mohegan or in Connecticut, but I'm sure there's a preference that they want to be in a market that's bigger and would they be able to take advantage of the opportunities presented to them. So I don't know why that would happen. That's a question for the league, and that's a question, I guess, for the Board of Governors if they are deciding on that, because I guess ultimately that's who decides on this type of thing. But I just can speak to our ownership group and them doing a thorough job of vetting potential investor groups to make sure that they're trying to find the right owner and potentially could relocate the team. But again, it's not the Connecticut Sun's decision on relocation. That's a Board of Governors vote. So the only thing that the Mohegan tribe can do is sell the team.
Hey Jen, can you speak to any conversations that the investment bank had with any of the markets that were interested in expansion?
I cannot. I know Allen and Co. was involved in the expansion bid process. I wasn't the decision maker on who we decided to ultimately hire as an investment firm for our process. I know that priorities were, obviously to have somebody that had experience, and Allen and Co. has the experience in the sports world, selling franchises or selling off minority stakes in franchises. And you want somebody who has the contacts, right? That they know who to reach out to, that has the ability to invest in the ways that our ownership group is looking to invest to. So you'll have to ask them on if they reached out to the expansion bid cities that didn't get a team, if that was part of the strategy. I just know that I was asked to meet with potential groups when they came to Mohegan. I don't know who the broad group of people that were reached out to.
Maggie and then Tarika?
You kind of answered it right there, but just as team president, what's been your role with the tribe and helping them with these, whether it's evaluating different options or meeting different people, what's been your role with this whole process?
I've been part of the diligence process, right? I think, any kind of process like this, potential investors want to have an understanding of the business, and I have the best understanding of the Connecticut Sun business. And so, I've tried to just be forthcoming and honest about where I think our strengths have been, and what we've accomplished here, because I'm really proud of that, but also what the challenges are. I think, that's been clear from the beginning, that there's diversity in the groups that come in here, and potentially different priorities, but they're going to make ultimately decisions based on what they think is best for the team that they end up investing in or purchasing. So I've just tried to be honest with the information that I've provided, that I've been requested to provide, and answer any questions around even intangible things in regards to the team as well.
Hey Jen, the report mentioned that with Boston not necessarily being a team that was placed in the expansion bidding process early on, do you or are you able to speak to whether or not if it was the relationship that currently exists between Boston and the Connecticut Sun, or the Celtics and Connecticut Sun, that, for lack of better terms, gives them the feeling that maybe they can circumvent the bidding process by just kind of placing out the ability or the want to sell, or how or why is Boston specifically the team or the city or the location, the area that is seemingly more interested in Connecticut than others? Is it the New England ties?
Yeah. I don't know that it was a circumvention. We're not considered an expansion team, right? So we would be an acquisition. That's a very different process than expansion. I can't speak to whether or not Boston was interested in an expansion bid. That's possible that they had conversations with the league or not. But what I can say is that if they're interested in acquisition, that would be them going directly to our investment firm and dealing directly with our ownership group. Again, process-wise, if they were somebody in that area decided to purchase the team outright, they still need to go through a process with the league to get approval to relocate. Many times I would think that sales are contingent upon the approval to relocate. So whatever happened between, investment groups that were interested and the next steps is not something that I can speak to. And it's not something that I'm involved in, right? But I do know that they would have to go to the league to let them know that they put a proposal in front of the Connecticut Sun, and then the league is supposed to present that to the Board of Governors for discussion and then ultimately approval. So I'm not a part of that process, so you'd have to ask the league whether or not that happened.
Anthony, then Matt.
Jen, you've been an executive for decades
Thank you.
around basketball.
Thank you.
You've been through a lot of challenging situations. This year you had to hire a new coach,
Yeah.
a new GM, and the team is not performing up to the standards that you're used to, whether at UConn or wherever you've been. How would you rate this season as being an executive and being around all these decisions that you had to make?
It's been hectic, I'm not gonna lie. I think, when the first leak came out in May, it was around training camp, that this was potentially happening. I remember saying to the team, focus on the season, right? This is out of your control. Whatever ends up happening, whatever our owners decide doing, it's not gonna happen for a while, so just focus on playing. And I've really tried to create that environment across the organization. I'm not gonna lie, it's been hard for me. Because it's, I'm one of the few people involved in that process. I don't have all of the information, clearly. I'm not included in all of the top level decisions, but I'm necessary for some of the diligence work that needs to go on in order to make this transaction smooth and successful. And so for me, it's pretty awesome opportunity. I've learned a lot, but it makes it a little harder for me to just kind of focus on the team performance. So the things that I've really tried to rally around and talk a lot with Morgan and Rashid about is we're setting ourselves up for the future. It doesn't matter where that is, right? It matters that we had a strategy in the off season, knowing that our roster was going to turn over to get younger, right? And have an eye to the future, tried to build the right foundation of accountability, teach our team how to play hard and play together. And so as long as we're seeing that happening, we're feeling like we're making progress. And if you saw us on Friday, you could see that happening with our team. We're not perfect. You know, today could be the complete opposite because we know that happens, right? We're like one team one day and another team the next, but that's the growing pains of having, at times we have 3 rookies on the floor. I mean, Layla's 20 and Anissa and Sanaya are like 22 and 23. So regardless of who you put on the court with them, we've got 3 rookies on the floor a lot of the game together. So that makes me feel good that like they're figuring it out and they're trying to get it. And I want to be able to create an environment where they can just focus on that. You know, I know Rashid spoke to the TD guarding game, and that's exciting for them, but they don't know like all the mechanics of what goes on behind the scenes. So we've just tried to get them to react to the day-to-day and you know, build your future on the work that you're putting in on a daily basis.
Is that how you addressed it with them yesterday? Did they have any questions?
Yeah, I didn't talk to them. Morgan and Alexandra did, and you know, it was the same thing we started with. There's no confirmed sale, so like, be clear. We're never going to tell our players what to say, right? Like, that's not who we are. So any of their reaction is going to be authentic. You know, you mentioned I grew up in the state, right? I'm a Connecticut girl, so like, I experienced our fan base and the support that I've gotten as a player, as a coach at the University of Hartford, and now as a team executive. Like, there's no way you can ever get me to say anything bad about Connecticut, its fan base, being here, being a part, having this be a big part of my career. But I know what our players want, and I know that their initial reaction to the news was like everybody else's, right? Like, oh my God, we're moving to Boston, right? So I'm sure that was exciting for a lot of the young players to think about. But again, they have a game today, and we just told them to focus on the game and just to kind of be careful what they say because nothing has been confirmed, essentially is the message we gave them.
Emily, then Maggie, and then ending with Rika.
You guys have reopened season ticket renewals
Yeah.
for next year. Is the plan still definitely to be at Mohegan in 2026? And are you seeing a similar renewal rate to previous years right now?
Yes, the plan is still to be playing here in 2026. That's what I've been told, right? So I think at this point we're at August. You know, any kind of decision made about ownership will potentially take some time, and if anything were to change, we'd still be in a situation where Mohegan Sun Arena would be our home, from what I've been told. Renewal rates I can't speak to yet. We are tracking them. You know, the way that it's kind of like a opt-out, opt-in scenario. So sometimes it's hard until the window is closed to know how many people actually renewed. Because they have to opt out if they don't want to. So until we have more, like until that window closes in I think August 21st, we won't really know what our renewal rate is. I will say that like we've gotten a lot of positive feelings from our fans based on the news that will be here next year. I know there's still uncertainty about the future, but you know, our loyal fans, like they're excited to be able to like watch this team grow and get into year 2 of this, you know, retooling of the roster and see where we can go. And if it ends up being our last year here, we're gonna make sure we blow it out, right? We're gonna have some fun with it, but I definitely don't think you want to miss it if you've been a Connecticut Sun season ticket holder for 24 years or 2. You don't want to miss next season. It's gonna be special.
I know obviously back in May, no one knew where this was gonna go, and
Yeah.
the album was made. Are you surprised that this proposal has come so quickly, or do you feel like did you expect it to take longer?
Define quicker. This has been a longer process than, you know, the last few weeks. So I will say that, you know, it's been a thoughtful process. You know, it wasn't decided on easily. A lot of discussion, you know, a lot of heavy hearts around the thought of, you know, after 23 years potentially selling the team from what I felt. But also the understanding that like this might be what's best, right? From what they've heard, what they've seen, you know, what they think they're capable of in terms of their business model. So it's been longer than most people probably think that we've been going through this, and I don't know what the normal amount of time it takes to make a decision like this, but it wasn't overnight, I can tell you that.
Ending with Rika.
Yeah, just last question for me is just around the fans and the loyalty that they have currently. Like, people are kind of confused, right? Even
Yeah.
hearing and knowing that it's not
Yeah.
officially just kind of feel conflicted. So I guess my question to you is just, what is your message to the current fans, to the fan base? Like how, you know, even in full transparency as a broadcaster, when people are asking, how do we present, you know, where the team is and how the fans should approach what's currently happening?
I think they need to honestly enjoy each moment, right? I know that sounds like a little corny and a little cliche, but sometimes we get so worried about what's gonna happen that we miss the fun moments that we're in. This group is fun. Don't get me wrong, I get frustrated sometimes with some of the dumb stuff they do on the court, but someone said to me the other day, they kind of stick together no matter what, right? It's been refreshing to see how they cheer for each other, how they support each other. That's not something you want to take for granted. So I would just say to our fans, regardless of how many more games we play in the state of Connecticut, enjoy every one of them, right? Enjoy every moment. The WNBA is exploding, and I think it's a hard balance. There's so many of us that are the passionate loyalists, right? And then there's also the business side. And I know one of the issues for team presidents right now is not pricing out our loyal fan base. It's really hard. It's a really hard dilemma that we're all having to want to think about revenue in a way that will allow us to invest in the players the way that they deserve to be invested in, but also take care of these loyal fans that have been supporting us before it was popular. And that it's been a challenge for us. So, I know we all think we're very thoughtful about how we want to do that as team presidents, and how we want to continue to take care of our real fans and not make this a corporate, vibe. But we want, I think it just to try to enjoy it. I don't know what the future holds. I think part of the thought of the team staying in New England is that our fans would be able to enjoy it. So if it ends up being a group that's in Connecticut or Boston, there's a lot of fans that come here from Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and there's a lot of Connecticut fans that went to the Boston game. The reason that we position ourselves as New England's team is because we really do want to be New England's team no matter where we're located. So I hope with we can just stick together, regardless of what the outcome is through all of this, that the appreciation for what our owners are trying to do, right? They're trying to do what's right by our players. They're trying to have an understanding and the foresight to know that the league is in a place where a 17 to 20,000 seat arena is probably a standard for the future, right? $100 million practice facilities and a location. I mean, if you're talking to me, being on the coast of the Connecticut in the summertime seems pretty good. But if you're talking to a 22-year-old, they want access to, shows and opportunities and sporting events and in ways that maybe Uncasville can't prepare them for. But what I will say is those that have played here, the ones I've talked to over years and years, even when I was playing in the WNBA, have always appreciated how they've gotten treated here. And that I want to always be part of the legacy of this ownership group, regardless of what happens. And I want our fans to appreciate that even if they don't agree or they're not happy with what decision is made, that they appreciate that it was done in the best interest of the WNBA and these players that they're cheering so hardly for.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.